Okay. If you're wondering why it's so dark, it's because I'm uploading this at 9:30 in the evening, Eastern Standard Time. Most of the few people that do watch these streams are probably not watching unless they get notifications and live in the West Coast, maybe. But I figured I'd just do this because I haven't done a stream in a while, and as most of you know, yesterday was the unveiling of a new Trump/Kushner immigration policies. Whenever Jared Kushner is involved, or whenever Jared Kushner or the Kushner faction is involved in shaping policy, it's always something to worry about. One of the few things that Chris Christie got right was that including Kushner, regardless of the fact that he's Donald Trump's son-in-law, in any sort of policy-making role is insane. I mean, even if you don't think he's as corrupt as his father, he's still woefully incompetent, and his inclination, especially on immigration, which is the core issue domestically for the United States, his inclinations on these issues, and particularly this one, are horrid. So that's always something to worry about. I'd be much more at ease if this was a Stephen Miller immigration plan. But notwithstanding that caveat, I didn't watch the speech on immigration, but I heard the broad outlines, and I'll give President Trump credit for one thing, which is acknowledging that our current immigration system and the factors we use to determine who should be here is completely insane. The idea of family reunification, i.e. chain migration, using that as the building block for immigration policy is simply absurd. And this has been the policy since the Hart-Celler Act, 1965, which completely eliminated national origins quotas, which was a disastrous decision. And it was probably the worst domestic legislation, the worst law enacted domestically of the 20th century. And there were some terrible laws, even in the last decade of the 20th century. And Hart-Celler, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, was just the worst. It's why we have some countries like, forget if it's Guatemala or, I believe it's Honduras, where nearly 40% of that country is literally inside the United States. There are so many exiles and refugees, economic exiles primarily, but also now people fleeing the turmoil within the country. And I don't blame people for not wanting to live in Honduras right now. But I don't think that means the U.S. should countenance what's essentially an invasion. There are, I think, 3 caravans as we speak headed towards the southern border, and there have been over 500,000 illegal immigrants apprehended. It's recently, it's just become completely unmanageable. But the idea of doing away with family reunification and chain migration, that principle, in terms of legal immigration, is a good one. The problem, the devil is always in the details. And this was actually an element of the amnesty, the mass amnesty. The Democrats conceded the idea of reducing the effect of chain migration, but in order to do that, you had to legalize upwards of 15 million illegal aliens. So essentially, you're giving the Democrats power in perpetuity in exchange for reforming an immigration system that should have been reformed decades ago, that really this should never have been enacted. The idea of using chain migration as the building block for immigration policy is simply absurd. The idea that you're the biggest determining factor in whether or not you're a resident or a citizen coming from another country is how many people from your family are already in the US. And to me, that's a ridiculous policy, especially when immigration is primarily kind of stripped of any sort of tangible connection to the US other than you simply being related to someone in the US. So in other words, even if you weren't initially allowed to enter the United States based on some tangible asset that you could transfer to the United States in terms of entrepreneurship or intelligence, or I think the most basic factor, which is allegiance to the United States. Do you share Western American values? And this is one of the big problems in Europe. They're essentially importing people who despise European culture, anti-Europeans. So I think addressing that is good, but I don't think skills-based immigration, although notionally it's an improvement, I don't think it addresses a lot of factors. I mean, there are tons of highly educated, particularly in the Muslim community, highly educated jihadists. I don't think there are highly educated Hindus that believe in the caste system. I don't think they should be Americans. And the simply stapling a green card to every H1B visa that comes through the transom, that's simply repackaged Romney. That's simply a repackaged Romney policy. This is a Chamber of Commerce, big corporate globalist initiative to simply boost the GDP. And I don't think it's a good idea. Again, I think it's better. I think a basic, one of the standards should be that you understand the English language. There are Turkish bazaris that can communicate in English, and the idea that you can't understand English and you let you come to the United States, unless you're someone like Ai Weiwei or a political dissident from another country that has no, there really are very few exceptions. I don't think that you should be allowed to come here if you can't speak English. It's the most common second language on the planet. It's the language of commerce. If you don't understand basic English, if you need a translator in order to vote, you shouldn't be allowed into this country. It's just that simple. But there are other factors as well. And I think that it's a bit short-sighted to just say skills-based, because Canada and Australia have skills-based immigration problems, and they have huge, huge problems in terms of identity and just immigration undermining the national culture. So it's a good start, but I kind of wish Steve Bannon was still in the White House, to be honest.